So here's the agenda. So we'll start off with a brief introduction and provide some context for what we mean when we're saying software and why we're involved in software. And then we'll get into the meat of the presentation, which is about 15 or so real-world success stories of what people have done with software to help you envision what you think it could help you. Not everything will pertain to you, just like not every farm is the same. We have a slide or two on our view of how to evaluate the return on investment of software, a slide or two on our personal training program, and then a slide on things to consider when purchasing or buying or shopping for software. And as you know, growers have used data for a long time. And as you go from left to right across this screen, there's a Sumerian tablet from the 14th to 15th century BC of a landowner instructing the operations manager of what to do on the field. We have a farmer's pocket ledger that's been in use for a long, long time, an Excel sheet, and then cloud-based software on the far right. And all four can create and record plans pretty effectively. They do their job. But if you want to record the results quickly and perform calculations, then you move into the three on the right. The two on the right, the Excel sheet and software, it's a lot easier to manage the changes. And it's a lot easier to use data from the prior season in the current season without a lot of extra work. What cloud-based software provides is access to that data in the field using your smartphone, and it's also multi-user. And what do we mean by that? Well, if you use Excel and you have someone else in the office that is also using that document and you need them to be done with it before they can send it to you so that way you can update it, that's really single user. Multi-user means different people can add data to the platform, to the software at the same time. If you, the grower, are out in the field and you see something and you record it on a scouting report while someone else is spraying a different field, all of that data can be brought in at the same time. And the architecture within the software organizes it so that way you can use it effectively. And I'll talk a little bit more about that on the ROI slide at the end. When we look at ag software, we see 5 pieces because there are a lot of types of software out there. And there are 5 things that ag software does when you boil it all down. There's record keeping, right? So documentation of activities and planning, financials, compliance, all of those documents that you have in binders and elsewhere or send to other people, software can do that in general, right? So we're talking about all types of ag software out there. There's also software, a piece of it that can handle operations management, right? What's the equipment doing? Now let's get maps of our activities and let's get some prescriptions. There's also decision support. So when data comes in, either it's an alert or it helps you make a decision, or it decides for you. If it's within this range, it comes up green. If it's within this range, it comes up yellow, right? That's decision support. Then there are data providers like satellite imagery companies, weather providers, other labs that provide you data, right? Think about your soil lab that tells you what's in your soil, right? That's a data provider. Then there are point solutions. We hear a lot about Internet of Things or sensors on the vehicles that tell you what's happening, or UAVs, unmanned aerial vehicles, also called drones. And when you look at the market, different types of software combine different aspects of these 5 things. And I made up 4 fictitious companies here. The first one, number 1, does a good job of record keeping and operations management. Number 2 can link point solutions with decision support. Number 3 can do record keeping with data providers, data also coming in. And number 4 is just a really good sensor, let's say. Trimble is doing all 5 with Trimble Ag software. We're doing it today, and we're going to continue to expand doing it in an easy way. So Trimble Ag Business Solutions, which is the group I work with, We're at the center of providing all this data for you, the grower, who is at the top of the screen. So that way you have one place to go for your equipment data. You have one place to go to share data with your advisor. If you do work with a food processor, that data can be shared with them, or your distributor or your ag retailer. You decide who sees the data, you decide which data comes in, but Trimble Ag Business Solutions created the architecture so that way the software does the work for you and you can focus on your operations. For those who don't know who Trimble is, because we are getting more into non-mechanized growing operations, specialty crops, and indoor farming operations. We've been around 30 years this year, over 9,000 employees, and our ag presence, a few points here is we're headquartered in Colorado. We service over 125 million acres with quite a few displays and GNSS subscribers for our correction services for our displays. So that's about us. Now let's get back to you and what you really wanted to hear about, which are some real world success stories. So I have so what I've done is I've taken quotes that we've heard from growers who are buying our software, growers who are using our software, from our different teams. So our inside sales teams talks to about 150 growers every day. Our support team gets about 80, 90 tickets a day, and we get surveys. And we also talk to people at trade shows. And what I've done is collected a lot of those comments and created quotes out of them. I wasn't able to go back to those individuals and attribute them to those individuals. So you'll see that these quotes are pretty similar in how they're written because I wrote them based on my recollection of what those people said. So let's get started. So the first success is that we provide cost per unit of production. If I was at a conference and speaking, I'd ask, for a show of hands, how many people manage by cost per acre? And a lot of people would nod and raise their hand or make eye contact for sure. And then when I ask, what about how many people manage, at a cost per unit? And a cost per unit, we mean bushel, hundredweight, ton, tote, box, melon, whatever those units are. And what you're seeing here is a screenshot from our website. It's a piece of this report of the expenses breakdown, where you can see the cost per unit of production on an expense area such as seed, fertilizer, and others. But you also can see it in a pie chart from a contribution point of view. And we're driving all of our software to be able to feed into the cost per unit of production. There are some things that don't contribute to cost per unit of production in terms of decisions, but just like your favorite truck factory measures its cost of unit production on a per truck basis, we see that with increased competition and what's happening with the prices of both of inputs and at the commodity end, and as grocers start to consolidate as well, there will be more and more pressure on this, just like we've seen in many other industries. So what this grower told me was that I can see the cost per unit for each field and rank them, right? Rank each field, he means. The higher fields get more attention first. The higher items within each field also get looked at while planning for next season. I don't have to check every figure, which I don't have time for anyway. So moving on, similar to that, we can also see it in this way. This is a demo account we set up. That's why a lot of the information is similar across. We have potatoes. This is a report that we wrote up in our financials reports. And I circled 5 of the column headings, revenue per unit, right? So that's revenue per hundredweight, the expenses per unit, and then the net revenue per unit. Same type of logic. So seeing which crops are contributing what and costing what by field helps me tremendously. I use past seasons for reference and plan next season in the same report template. We completely transitioned from Excel. And because it is linked to the fields and all the activities, all of those things feed into this table. And I can show you how. So we've looked at cost per unit of production and net revenue contribution by crop and field. Now we'll get into some reports. We hear from a lot of growers that, especially those who are subject to FSMA, that they have a lot of people that need reports, and many people do. And so in this case, we have a seeded acreage report where we have the field ID, which is the Trimble Ag Software ID number, the field name, the legal description, which some people need, the seeded date, the seeded acres, the crop, and the variety. And what this grower said was, this report is easy. The best part is I can fill it out on the mobile app while actually seeding. All right, so while he's in the tractor, he's filling out the app because he doesn't have a display to record it, but the app can do it for him. In this case, we have a product application report, and it's organized. We have about 3 or 4 different product application report templates, and this one is organized by manufacturer, so BASF, Bayer Crop Science, and Dow AgroSciences, and then by product name, and then the acres to which it was applied, the average rate, and the total units. In this case, the grower said getting this report is easy as well. I can fill it out on the app while I'm in the cab, or send it in from the display wirelessly. I like not having to fill out Excel later because keeping up with reporting takes up a lot of our time, and I don't see it lighting up. Okay, so now that we've seen some reports, let's see a couple of things of the mobile app and what it can do. This is bin capacity. So what we're looking at is a screenshot of a mobile app. It's a demo account that we have. Up here at the top, I don't know if my cursor is showing up, but we have MF-2, and that's the name of the bin. Then we have the crop, canola, the capacity of the bin, the current inventory of the bin at 8830, the space available at 170 bushels. We have a nice quick reference that we're 98% full. We can add a bin or take out a load. We can add a load to the bin or remove a load from the bin with a plus and minus sign. All of the loads associated with this bin are below. So we have 4 deliveries from field called Maple S28. That's the field name. The most recent delivery was on September 26 at 6:26 p.m. For 880 bushels. The prior load is before that. I don't show it here, but if you go back one screen, then you can see every bin. So these blue squares that you see at the top, you would see all those blue squares stacked up on each other. So you could quickly look at your bins to see which ones are getting filled and which ones are not getting filled as fast. And then you can go into that bin and then see this view. So this grower told me when we spoke, we used to get our bin reports every few days. One season, a couple bins filled up more quickly than expected because of better yields. Had I known sooner, I could have redirected some loads to give us more flexibility later. Our logistics were a mess for a day because of that. Now I can see every load and bin on my phone as it happens. He confided in me that he's addicted to it during harvest season. So it's kind of interesting feedback. Another thing that we've done is provide the futures pricing, which a lot of people do, but also the impact to the top line on a daily basis, not just the price. So here we're looking at the commodities tab. This is a 2016 crop year. This person had 1,695 acres. I believe this is a demo account, so a lot of these numbers may not add up. The projected gross revenue is 800,000, and the daily change was minus 554, so minus $554. The 2 commodity cards that we have here, one is for corn, and we can see that the price change of 2.4 cents unfavorable netted a $3,600 drop in revenue based on futures. And beans were up 10.4 cents at the bottom, netting a positive change of 3,000. There are a couple other commodities below this, but because we take the target acres that are in your plan, as well as the target yield, as well as the futures price, then okay, we kind of know what your expected production is. We go the extra step and say, yes, now you can see the daily change. So this grower said, used to be, I would check the price and see how much it changed day to day. Some days I would go a step further to see what it meant to my top line, and he means at the farm level, right, as well as at the crop level. Now I open the app and it's there by crop and farm. So trying to make it simple. The next few slides are what can happen with data coming in from the display and what people have been doing. This is a screenshot from the website. If you look up to the top left, you see Stark number 1, that's the field name. The home farm under the Brian Stark organization, he's one of our employees. And it looks like some work was done. The operator was Jacob, the vehicle was the 4730, the materials was stored in 22K, and then the file. That's the actual zip file from the display. On the far right, you have a coverage map of that field. And if you look up in the top right corner, you can see that we're looking at liquid rate. If we were to click on that arrow, there would be other data sets that were available. The green is 6.91 gallons per acre on that legend in the top right. And the red is 13.48 gallons per acre. And you can see that coverage file over that field. What we've done is we've added a verify task and edit task button. So that way, as these files are coming in, before they populate all of those tables and all of those financial reports that I showed earlier, we've given the operator and the owner, we've given the owner the option to verify tasks before they come in, or edit them as they come in, before they populate. And so here, the grower said, and I remember this conversation, he felt the pain, but he said, my team works hard. Sometimes they make a simple error or are new to the job and aren't familiar with the displays. The verify task and edit steps let me check the data coming in from the displays to be sure something wasn't done by mistake while they were doing their best to beat the weather. And the case he had was someone put down 200 gallons of Roundup. Well, they didn't put down 200 gallons of Roundup. They put down 200 gallons of liquid that had Roundup in it, and it wasn't 200 gallons of active ingredient. Well, he didn't catch it until the winter when he was doing his crop plans. And by then, what had actually happened had, been so long ago that he had to rack his brain to try to figure out what did actually happen, so that way his product application reports were correct. And making a change so late in the season was some work that he didn't expect that he would have to do. And so by having this verify task and edit that he can do closer to when it's occurring was a big step for him. And we've adopted that across everything. Okay, I'm just checking chat. There aren't any chat questions yet, so I'll continue. This is another part of how we've integrated data coming from the display into the website and to our app. So here we're looking at a summary of the hills field, and I've circled dry yield, and that's the dry yield map coming over everything from, according to the legend, 0 bushels per acre all the way up to 47 bushels per acre. And then on the mobile app, there's a view of that layer associated with that field. I'm going to use my cursor, and up in the top right, you see 3 squares that are stacked up like pancakes. That's the layers icon to allow you to choose different layers. And what we've done is we've chosen layers from the display for this field. And as you come down to the bottom, you see the legend dry yield, everything from 0 out to 47.7. And if you click on these 3 dots, then you can pick other attributes of data, other layers that came in from the display. Okay. And this story was that this grower fertilizes after harvest. So here he says, we fertilize after harvest. We would make our fertilizer maps and calculate how much fertilizer we would need using the yield maps from the displays. We would rush from tractor to tractor to get the files with memory sticks. So imagine someone running around in their truck, running out to the fields, running up in the cab, slamming the stick into the display to get that harvest yield data. and then running back, and hopefully they have enough sticks, and then they have to get back to the office to load it. And then so this final sentence is, now the files are sent to the software with Wi-Fi or cell. What he also didn't mention, but I can imagine, is that person who used to run around doing that is probably also driving a truck, getting the loads away from the fields, right? So you already have limited resources, and now instead of them chasing data, they're actually helping with the operation. I'm not saying that chasing data is not a good use of time, but rather, could they be doing something that adds more to their operation than chasing sticks? So here we have a picture of a screenshot. One of the layers is drone imagery, and it was applied to this field. And here the grower said, I like the software, but I'm purchasing imagery from another company, which, by the way, Trimble is perfectly fine with, and we support that. Having it all in one place on my phone makes it easy to find it when I need it, which is typically when I'm out in the field. And the native app means that the images are on my phone. So I'll pause there and just talk about native app. Native app is a term that means that the app is storing data on the phone. And you can access that data even when you don't have a Wi-Fi signal or a cell signal. So think about the times you didn't have a Wi-Fi or cell signal, but you could still access photos of your family on your phone, right? Because it's stored on your phone. And that's the same type of logic here with a native app. It means that it's stored on the phone. You can make updates to the data. You can delete data. And as soon as you have a Wi-Fi connection or cell connection and sync with the cloud, all that the cloud will be synced to represent what you had done on the phone. Okay. Okay, now we're going to go into what we call the fleet part, right? So the tractors. And we're going to focus on some situations where you have, two situations where you have dispersed operations. So on the left is a screenshot of our website. Up in the top left under the Trimble logo, it does say 2015. That's because someone was working in the 2015 crop year. But if you look right below where it says working state summary in red, you can see that the date is December 3, 2016. So we are looking at December 3, 2016 data. On the left are all the tractors that this grower has. They are based in the Southeast and operate nearly year-round, so having tractors operate in December is quite normal for them. And I pointed out two things, a working state summary and a working state timeline. And I'm going to walk through that. The pie chart shows, and basically 3 types of people were working with us, 3 types of customers, and they wanted data represented 3 different ways. So we said, okay, we'll represent it all 3 ways. So we have this vehicle that starts with A2, and it has the operator name. And there's a pie chart that quickly lets people know, oh, okay, it looks like they're working, call it 80% of the time. So green is working, red is stopped, and blue is moving. And then it says total hours was 7.76, so that's from the start of their day to the end of the day. Of that 7.76 hours, they worked 6.87. They moved 0.14 hours, and they were stopped 0.76 hours. And if you want to see a timeline from the beginning of the day on the left to the end of the day on the right, you can see the green and the red and where those stripes are. And and you can see this over a 24-hour period. So I'll come back up to the top. So you have the date, December 3. The start time that this person chose was 6 a.m. and they looked at a 10-hour shift, but you can toggle this all the way out to 24 hours, and you can have the start time be any time of the day you would or night that you would like. On the right is a mobile screen app image of this is a different farm. It's a 2018 farm map, and I circled one of the 2 tractors because that's the CSU JD8310, and you can see where it is. And if you click on Get Directions, then the mobile app will open up a new page, and the phone map app that you use, so if you use Google or if you use the iPhone, that will show up and it'll have directions to where that tractor is using its lat long. And it can do that because it has a display in it. And what the grower told us when we were working on the website on the left was, we can't check on the operators all day because they are spread out. They work hard, but don't always ask for help when they should. The working summary helps us see who needs help. Also, they can't get lost getting to their equipment because we have directions. So, someone that may have needed help, if you look at the second bar, you have that red bar right there in the middle. It's about an hour long, just guessing from the 1.23. Maybe that person was, they were worried about the field, or they're working with the display, trying to get it to upload some files, or they got lost. They thought they were in the right field and they called someone and they didn't call the right person, and just to make sure that they were doing their job right. So this gives the opportunity for the manager to work with them and say, hey, can you tell me what happened there? And then that way you have more visibility and more opportunities for improvement. I'm going to return to the mobile app for one moment. If you'll see the history button on the bottom right, where it says history. And when we do that, and I'm going to go to the next page, when you click on that, this page shows up, the location history. And what we're looking at the top line is something that occurred on November 16, 2016 from 1 p.m. on, and I had selected an 8-hour view, which is what we're looking at. If we were to click on this pencil, that's where you edit that date. So it's just like setting your alarm on your phone, right, with those dials. And I circled 2 sets of line. The green lines are working lines, and the blue lines are speeding lines. There are also some white lines, and if you look at the legend, it means pending. What that means is that the operator turned the display off before all of the data was uploaded to the cloud. So the display knows that something happened, the website knows that something happened, but because the display didn't shut off, the display didn't tell the cloud whether the person was working or speeding. Okay, so it's just pending, which is a safe way of saying, well, as soon as that data connection is restored, we will let you know exactly what happened, right? And so within those green lines and other lines, while it's really, really hard to see on the screen, there are white triangles that we call breadcrumbs. And what this grower said was, the breadcrumbs with speed lines have helped me a lot. I can see who went where and how fast they went. I just look at my phone while I'm in my tractor. And the software lets me set the speed limit for each operation. So each OEM has its own ways of deciding what is working speed and what is speeding speed, and how long someone is stopped before they say, oh, this person actually stopped. And because all that data comes into our software, within our software, you can set that for yourself. So that way, if you have an operation that is actually, you want done at 5 hours, but the OEM said, well, if you want something done at 5 miles per hour, and the OEM, for whatever reason, said 7 miles an hour and faster is speeding, well, you'll never know if someone was going 5, 6, 6.9 miles per hour. But with our software, you can set it as precisely as you would like for those that make sense, okay? So we spent a lot of time on financials, on what the app can do, on getting information from the display to the display and fleet. Now let's move on to something that everyone has to deal with, which is the weather. And you can get field level weather with an add-on, which we call Ag Premium Weather. It's an add-on to the base package. And we're looking at 2 screens here. This is the same map. This is the same farm that I showed earlier above, and it's the historical weather. And I circled in red on the screen on the left, it says last 24 hours. And what you see in that green circle is every field associated with this farm. So I'll bring my cursor up so you can see up in the top left, right around 9:30, 10 o'clock, there's a kind of a square, sort of, and then a partial pivot. And then over on the right, between 3 and 4 o'clock, there are 3 rectangles. Those darker lines are the field boundaries. If I had fields 20 miles apart, then that radius, the diameter of that circle would be 20 miles, right? So it auto sizes to wherever your fields are. And as you can see, at least on February 8th, we had very little precipitation, if anything at all. On the right, I went back to October 9th. Probably should have gone back further. It's been so dry here. But now you start getting contours of precipitation. And here, it's not a huge difference because it was a short period of time and we haven't gotten a lot of precip. But the darker is 2.78 and the lighter, more kind of lime green is 3 inches. And this grower, the grower that I had spoken to, which isn't the grower for these fields because this is a demo field. I'm just linking quotes with information I have access to. I really like my weather station, but as I expand, I need more of them, which means checking in on more of them. Seeing all of my fields on a contour map by temperature, humidity, growing degree days, and precipitation is an easier way to go. Another piece that comes with Ag Premium Weather is hail alerts. For clarity, this doesn't tell you when hail will come or, so it's not a warning. It's rather, it lets you know what had happened. In the US, we get a contour map, which you can see on the right. It might be hard over the internet, but there's a light yellow band that kind of cuts from the middle of the left part of the screen to the bottom right of the right part of the screen. And then right around dead center, there are contours that get red and get into purple. In the United States, we have contour by the size of the hail, and the legend is on the far right. In Canada, it's either hail or no hail, and that's because of the weather service that's in each country and the data that they are able to provide. Okay, and this was a storm that hit South Dakota last fall, or right around October. Oh yeah, October 12th, that's the date, and we did have one of our employees double check it, and we've tested this tremendously, and it's been very effective. What's great about the hail alert is that it slims down the potential work you have to do. And it also helps you understand if something hit a field that you just didn't have visibility to. And it may also help you be alerted to something that happened in a field that could be agronomically resolved with help from your agronomist, depending on the time of season. So what this grower told us was that before last season, my agronomist and I checked the fields I thought were hit hardest by hail. We missed a few because we couldn't see the whole field. Right, so imagine you're looking over a ridge and the back left corner got pounded. Last season, we went to the right fields, giving us more time to figure out what to do next. So hail alerts are about letting you know. And the way it works is that if there is a field boundary inside this contour, then you will get an alert. If all of your field boundaries are outside of these contours, then you will not get the alert. And then the final two stories, one of them is time cards. Our time card replaces paper time cards. It replaces the checking in and checking out. It replaces the taking time off for a break and allows people to do it on their phone. It also shows where the person checked in and where the person checked out. One of our developers was traveling to New Brunswick and checked in before his flight left, and when he landed in Calgary, checked out, or he checked out at his house. But it works in much closer proximities as well. This grower said, my office manager spends a lot of time chasing time cards at the end of each pay period. So a larger team means more headaches. And it isn't clear where people checked in and checked out. Time Tracker helped us reduce a lot of busy work. And I did mention inventory management earlier, and that's the final customer success slide that we have. On the left is a screenshot from inside our inventory management piece of our software. It doesn't show it, but there's a summary. So each one of these tabs can be clicked on. The summary provides a high-level managerial summary of things that are important. You can look at the seeds you have in inventory, the fertilizer you have in inventory, the crop protection, and then we have another tab for uncategorized. And at the top of each column, we have the amount that's in inventory, the average unit cost that gets updated each time there is a purchase, the total cost, what was applied, the average rate that was applied, the total applied, and the balance. And this can be managed by crop year. And on the right, you can manage your inventory and seed inventory also by seed, by fertilizer, and by crop protection. I have a screenshot of our seed inventory of our demo account, and it's the Tradition variety. The average over in the top right beneath 2017, the average unit cost was 36 cents per pound. On the left, the average rate was 90 pounds per acre. The amount we purchased was 9,000 pounds. The amount we applied was 7,900, and the balance was just under 1,100 pounds. So this grower says, I can't wait to see what my inventories are. I look at my crop protection inventories daily, and when fields are completed, operators enter the applications in the app while they're in the cab applying them. And he went on to say how that just helps him get, he's not in a rush to buy things and doesn't have to create any type of issues when he's talking to his ag retailer. Okay, so that's quite a lot of stuff, over a dozen, and I really appreciate your patience walking through that. The next step is a handful of slides on how we think it makes sense to evaluate the return on investment, the ROI of software. And so I'm going to tee this up with a couple situational slides and then provide you a framework to consider when evaluating the ROI. So the situation we have here is we have time on the very top going from left to right. The blue boxes represent, what could happen without software. So I'll walk through, and the yellow represents what could happen with software. So what could happen without software is someone in the field writes an observation down. For example, the seed price went up. They might keep it in their truck. They might bring it to the office. The person in the office might keep it on their desk. And at some time, probably in batches, whenever they get back to that Excel sheet or something, they enter it into the system. And then the farm manager, the owner on the far right, sees that outcome. It also might be bin tickets, right, for the loads coming in. With software, the person who made that observation enters it into the app and syncs it. And then that manager can see the outcome almost immediately. And so less time is spent per data transaction, right? Yes, there's more data every day on the farm, but it would be great if less time could be spent on every transaction. But what does this mean, right? So let's take that situation without software. All those blue boxes, we'll copy it on this slide. Time is still moving from left to right. And what we've done is we've identified potential sources of waste in those light red boxes and what that means in terms of their impact on the bright red boxes on the far right. So at almost every step, there is a timeliness of the data that's creating a problem because it was kept in the truck, it had to be brought to the office, it was kept on the desk, and then the time it takes to enter into the system. And maybe that Excel sheet gets sent by email to the owner and it sits in their inbox for a while, and then they finally open it up, but they're on their phone, and boy, you know how Excel is on the phone. So basically what it means is that the issue is found later because of timeliness issues. Another source of waste is human error because a second person was entering the data in. And it could be maybe they put in 42 instead of 24, or maybe they couldn't read the ticket and had to make a guess, or maybe they had to call the person and get a response of what it was, which creates more timeliness issues. But because of that human error, more issues are created, right? By the time it gets to the owner, or the manager, that 24 that should have been a 42 creates an issue, and now that manager has another fire to fight. What happened? And then they find out, oh, it was a typo. And then resource allocation, right? So is having that person bring it to the office, or during harvest, having that person run from tractor to tractor to get those memory sticks loaded with the yield files. And then entering it into the system is another resource allocation. So what happens is issues are found later, more issues are created, and there's less capacity among your personnel to fix those issues, right? And so that's kind of in a nutshell of how we see that. So then how do you estimate a software ROIs? And I hate to use the economics answer, but it depends. Every farm is different, right? Trimble doesn't know if you lease your land or own your land. We don't know if you own your tractors or lease your tractors. We don't know your depreciation, how you depreciate things. We don't know if you're LIFO. We don't know if you're FIFO. We don't know if you're weighted average. And so for us to say this is your ROI would be a stretch for us to do. So on the y-axis, you have profits from 0 all the way going up. And on the x-axis, we have a bunch of steps. So calling a spade, software does cost money, and I'll talk about that in a minute. And it does take time to implement, right? Absolutely. But what you start seeing is you're starting to find issues sooner. And you didn't want those issues in the first place, but you find them sooner. You create fewer issues because you don't have double entry, right? People are entering it once and done. But what I did in the red ink there is those last two green boxes, this is where ROI accelerates. And it really depends on the value of those things in those boxes. So let's talk about those for a second. In the third box, now you can address what I would call cost reduction projects that maybe you didn't have time to do before. And you can do it with the same number of people. So if you had 5 cost reduction projects last season, and for whatever reason, you can only get to 4, were there things that could have helped you get to that 5th one? I don't know. It's just a question. Also, you can approach new marketing projects to increase the top line. So one grower told me that he was thinking about adding 50 acres of a specialty grain because he has a connection to a bourbon maker in Kentucky, and without software, it would have been too much time and effort to try and manage 50 acres of a specialty crop and to manage all the costs associated with that because, it was just too much. But he had more time to do that because the software made it easier. So I really think, and the rest of Trimble thinks, that the ROI is really in those far two right boxes, because those may have been previously unattainable or previously unseen opportunities. And that's where software can really help. Okay, we do offer personal software training. It's complimentary 2 hours. Trimble pays for it. You don't have to pay for this complimentary 2 hours. If someone buys a new Farmer Pro or a Farmer Pro Plus license, we arrange for someone either from one of our resellers or one of our agri-train coaches to deliver the training. Anything after those 2 hours is between you and the trainer on how that wants to be done. Trimble is not involved in that, but for those first 2 hours, we pay the trainer to train you, right? You don't have to manage that cost. You don't have to manage paying. We pay those trainers for you. We have the content, which I'll talk about on the next slide. We have an online printable starter manual that goes over like the first 10 things that are a good idea to do just to get you started up. And one of our salespeople told me about this. They said that there was a grower. He said, I wanted to purchase last season, but was concerned about not having enough time to learn it on my own. I purchased it after learning Trimble would pay for the first 2 hours of one-on-one training. It wasn't hard to use after all, just hard for me to try something new. And so this is just a graphic of what's in the starter manual. So on the far left, how to create crops in Trimble Ag software, how to create materials in Trimble Ag software. Obviously, you don't put in N, P, and K. I was lazy, so that's me. How to create fields, right? So you might have two. They might walk you through how to create two fields, including the field boundary, the crop boundary. If you want to do field scouting, how to do field scouting. If you want to make recommendations, how to make recommendations. If you use benchmarks, which are points in the field, how to enter those. How to create a crop plan. How to create a field plan. How to record a seeding task. How to record an irrigation task. And how to record a rain event. Walk through that, each of these, and I use folder just because I think people that deal with paper might also use folders. I do still in some cases, but all of this information is managed by field. And if you think about each folder being a field, well, we take those folders and put them in and manage them by crop year. So if you have a 4-high with, a crop year in each drawer, that's how it's architected. So it's very similar. How to arrange your farm level settings, such as your time zone, your currency, or your units of measure. Everything defaults to US. So if you have mixed units of measure, or if you use metric instead of imperial, you want to know how to do that. And then down here, for those that have storage or bins, how to create storage bins, and how to manage transactions between the field and the bin, and how to manage transactions between the bin and your customer. Okay, so that's all that's inside that 2 hour. Some growers take an hour, some take 2, but we're here to help you figure out, how that works with you. Buying guide. The buying guide that we put together is a list of, what to consider when you're considering software. And there's a lot of software out there. And here are some things that we've put together. Obviously, you have your list, but some of the things that we've seen is listed on the far left. So there are 9 items. Your priority, whether it's high or low, or it's not an issue for you either way. Where Trimble stands, and then if you're considering another 1 or 2 options, whether they have it or not as well. So the first, is there a support team for you to reach out to and get help? Is there software training one-on-one that can help you get through those first few steps? Is pricing flat rate, or is it per acre? And I'll talk about our pricing in a moment. We don't believe in per acre pricing because you should benefit from your growth, not us. Is the mobile app native and available on Android and iOS? Or is it more like a website that you have to use through a tablet, right? You want the native app, for sure. What's the general breadth of the software? So of those 5 major items that I mentioned early on, how much does the software cross across those 5 items? How many years in business has it been? API, so that's shorthand for basically a data standardization agreement. So that way when data comes in from somewhere else, it goes into the right places in our software. So does it have APIs with other ag companies? We do. John Deere, CNH, Raven, Hecco, DTN for daily commodity prices, and then bar chart for futures. We use weather decision technologies for our weather, and we use Google for maps and other things. Is it an Ag Gateway's ADAPT program? So ADAPT is an acronym that talks about, and it's a program that is, again, about standardization. There's just so many devices, so many pieces of software, and Trimble is committed to making sure that our software interacts in a friendly way with everyone else, using that program and from Ag Gateway. And then, does it provide you a cost per unit of production across your whole farming operation? Or is it more limited to equipment, or is it more limited to inputs, or is it more limited to genetics, right? So does it cover your entire operations? For those who are interested, because we do get questions from time to time, we do have our plans on our website. Up at the top left, it's agriculture.trimble.com software, and you can click on plans. everything I talked about today is covered in Farmer Pro, and it's about $149 per month, so $1788 per year. And the difference between Pro and Pro Plus is Pro is up to 5 users and Pro Plus is up to 10 users. And Farmer Basic has no internet connectivity, to help you with that. So nothing from the desktop was shared in today's presentation.